Next question: is there any way the men's group can learn more about boundaries and the fact that they are for protection, not punishment, particularly in regard to sexual intimacy?
Yes, and I think that's very important, because I've heard men say, "What are they learning over there? Why is my wife coming up with this action plan, and then the consequences for that? You know, she's kicked me out of the house, and then we'll ask the question, well, did you know about this? Yeah, but 2 months ago she might have said something about it, but I really didn't pay attention. And now she's following through on what she's doing. Yeah, but then he wants everybody to feel sorry for him, because now poor me. And so one of the things that we want to do is we want the reason why we're taping this is because I'm going to show this to the men's group, and then we're going to have Rosa and Elsa go there and help explain what's going on. So this whole thing that we're starting to do with FMO and FWO is so they can each learn about what the other's learning, and so they understand what the women are learning. Because we don't want it to make it into a man-hater club, or that over there to a feel sorry for me kind of club. That's not what this is about. It's about educating both sides on what we're doing. And what women go through, more about what their healing process is different than men. Mm-hmm. Rosa and I do a little skit where it's, I bring in, and some of you have heard this, where I bring in my backpack, and it's got these pornography, lust, adultery hanging out of it, and I'm like, I throw it down on the ground and say, I'm done, I'm clean, everything, and let's move on with our marriage. And she goes through it and asks questions like, did he really love me? Mm-hmm. What else is in that bag? And she starts going through it and starts to just tears her apart more and more. And so there's a different process that men go through. Men are like, as soon as they throw it out there, they're done. It's like, okay, let's move on. But they don't realize
Then I'm having to carry the baggage.
Yes.
We've learned that in our books. Next question. How are you sensitive to your wife's pain? How did you not get angry? How did you move beyond being mad at yourself?
The first one is when I saw the pain that she was going through in Hong Kong, when she sat there and read through, we were in there probably for 12, 14 hours after she beat me up. And we didn't leave the room. And basically, she asked me, "Is there any more?" And I get down on my knees and say, "No, that's it. Let's just get this process started." The Holy Spirit said, "No, this is where it starts." So she went literally through hundreds of pictures and hundreds of emails, and I saw her go through that. And she didn't have some very nice comments on some things. And there's nothing I could do but just watch her. And I kept asking her, "Is that enough? Is that enough?" And she'll say this. She does not recommend this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She does not recommend this because it hindered her recovery.
Yeah. Now I wish I wouldn't have seen all that I saw. I wish I would have just said, okay, there's some emails or there's some pictures, and left it at that. Because now some of those images that I saw, it's 100 more triggers in my head, and it's making it harder for my recovery.
And also when on the testimony you saw, when she sat next to me and put her head on my shoulder, I'm getting emotional now, and said, "It's going to be all right." It's like, oh man, just like I said in the testimony, this woman has just shown me so much compassion throughout the years, and now this, telling me it's going to be all right, that really helped me not to be angry about it, but to have more compassion. And that comes in time too. A lot of us, when we first get caught, we're very numb. We don't have a lot of emotion. We try, but we really don't have. And through this process, God starts to peel back all that garbage and stuff that's blocking that emotion. And we start to become more emotional. So at first it may not seem like he's emotional, but if he works the program and God starts to work on him, he will. How to get beyond the anger is because my sin caused her pain. I started to realize it was my sin. It wasn't nothing that she had done. It was my sin that caused that. And it just took time, a lot of prayer, group, forgiveness that I had to give to others that had hurt me, education. I really dove into the whole process of recovery.
Okay, next question. My husband said our marriage didn't count. Is that true in the eyes of God? When our divorce is final, where does the offender stand with God? Where do I stand as the wife that tried everything to save the marriage? I still feel guilt.
The first part of that is the husband saying that the marriage didn't count. That's a lie from Satan. It's because he's got so much guilt on him. It's easier for him to just push that aside and move on, because he's not really going to his feelings. And believe me, he knows he's wrong. And for him to say something like that is totally from Satan. This is not true. And he has to deal with God. And there's some scripture that I have here. Marriage should be honest. I'll try to find it at the end of this, but there's a scripture that says that he's got to deal with the issue with God. And you know what? Someday it's going to catch up to him. And I hope it's before the divorce is final. But if not, he's got to deal with that. And and for yourself, you work on your relationship with God.
Amen.
And that, you're not going to be able to control him. You're not going to be able to change his. But God's going to view you as a godly woman. And you tried to save your marriage. And you did everything that biblically that is in the Bible. And you can feel good about it. You can say, you know what? I gave it my best, God. And you know what? It didn't make it. But part of that is, which is very difficult, you need to forgive him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's scripture all over the place that says, if you don't forgive him, God's not going to forgive you. Mm-hmm. And so, but don't let the lies of Satan affect you, even though it's going to be difficult. He's got to deal with his issues. You keep the faith in your walk.
What did you do about opposite sex in the workplace? How did you set your boundaries to put safeguards around your mind and also protect Rosa's mind? How did you know you really loved your wife even though you did those things? What helped you know the difference between Rosa's concern for your boundaries and control?
The first, about the opposite sex, I tried to get them all fired. I used to be a big flirt, but that when we got married the second time, that wasn't the case. But I'll just give you an example. I had to walk through 2 doors, through a hallway, 2 doors to go through customer service, and that was the main way I walked all to wherever I was going in the different parts of the company, and they were all women. And you know what? I just walked the way around the other way. I didn't eat lunch in the cafeteria. I work around a bunch of engineers, so it's easier for me to do that. But if I did have to speak to a woman, it was very business. It was very business. There was no more, hey, how was your weekend? None of that stuff. So it was business and minimal. But not just at work, but I use the example because at Christmas time, you go to Macy's and there's a woman sitting there with like this, taking your credit card. I would literally do this. I would, and you know what? If she thought I was being stuck up and whatever, great. I want women to think I'm stuck up. I want them to think.
Me too.
So what I did is I just avoided contact with women, and again, this was part of my recovery and what I was doing. About the boundaries, what I did is I took my thoughts captive. And I have no control on protecting her mind, but what I could do for myself is we read that scripture about taking your thoughts captive. Mm-hmm. And when your guy is going through this, whether it's an affair or whether it's porn or whatever, we daydream a lot. And the example I'll use is thinking, the affair that I had, and I started to think about the other woman, and I would say, no, I'm going to stop doing that. And that time period starts to go less and less and less. Because what I'm doing is I know my thoughts and I'm really focused on them. So that time that I'm thinking about her goes down to, as soon as I think about it, I say, God, take it away. And I praise God for working, for making me aware of this, and also for me to be aware of it and to reduce that time. So that's what I did. I took my thoughts captive. As far as protecting her thoughts, just showing her what I was doing. Showing her that I wasn't receiving texts from females, I wasn't communicating with females, and I was very honest with her. You guys have heard some stories where I was at the gym and I made eye contact with another woman, and it happened twice, and I just left the gym. I didn't want to be tempted. Same thing at the pool. I swim, same thing. It's just what I came and I told her, even though I knew she wouldn't be happy about that. I told her. And I could see she, especially at the beginning, she would like, but then she'd come over and kiss me and thank me then for telling her, for being honest.
And it wasn't like he was making me the accountability partner. He had the guys for that. But it was just once in a while just letting me know so that I kind of knew where he was at too in his recovery. So it wasn't that I was expecting him to, tell me daily or weekly even. But and then I would though, every once in a while, if I didn't hear anything for a long time, I would ask, well, how you doing? How you doing with your recovery? And so, he would tell me good, or I don't remember a time that I asked that he said, oh, I forgot to tell you this, or something like that. But
there was times early on, even though I did not have contact with that woman, we were still working for the same company, and I would literally get up at 5, whatever, early in the morning. I would look at my phone. Well, back then it was a BlackBerry, the old school one, and I would look at it and I would go, oh man. And I would go to work and I would say, I got an email, not from her, from her, but it was like I was CC'd or whatever. It wasn't directly to me. And I would think about that the whole day, and I'm just going, man, I got to go home and I got to tell her. I never told her on the phone. I would always go home and I say, I got this email today. So there was no direct communication, but there was business communication. And she really wanted me to leave that company. And even though we weren't having a lot of contact, and God just said, I didn't feel like God was telling me to do that. So I kind of said, well, I started making excuses and whatever else. And she ended up leaving the company.
Amen.
She ended up leaving the company. So,
God moves.
So, but now God's telling me to leave the company. So that's another story. How did you know you really loved your wife? How did you know you really loved your wife, even though you did these things? I never stopped loving my wife. Even when during the affair, I never said I was going to leave her and love her. And one of the things that Ted Roberts talks about is that it's not about love, it's not about sex, it's about a deeper wound, a deeper hurt that we have in us. And we medicate it through either sex addictions, through drug addictions, through alcoholism, through, you could even be working out or whatever. It's something deep rooted in us that we're medicating the pain through this process. And different men have different ways of dealing with it. So, and people, this is a very difficult question to answer. If you loved Rosa, then why did you do this? My family even asked me that. And it was, part of that is Satan knew my weaknesses. He knew my weaknesses. I had a porn issue that she had no idea I had. And this was just a fantasy. And I was in a place where I felt I was living a very sinful, single man's life, and when I was living overseas. And I felt that being away, it was okay. But the guilt was killing me. But you know what? I still did it. I still did it. And could I give you a right answer that's going to make you feel good? No, I'm not. Yes.
So do you apologize to the other woman too and make things right with her as well? Or does that they just get left wounded?
What we did is that that night that we were there in Hong Kong, she said that I need to let her know. I need to let the other woman. So I typed her up an email, and she together we typed her up an email, and we sent it to her, and that was it. There was no other contact. This is going to be difficult for you guys to grasp, but she needs to forgive that other woman. And I don't know if she really has, but and that's really tough to take. That's really tough to take. But what does it say? What does it say in the Bible?
Wounded too.
Yes, though she had a lot of issues. But that's not, I don't concern myself with that. That's she's got to be, that's her issue. But in the Word, it talks about that, and that's really difficult for another woman to forgive another woman that's cheated with her husband.
But I want to add something to that too. Is that the other woman? She knew that Tony was married, and she knew exactly what she was doing, and she knew that Tony was coming back to the States, and Tony had already told her, "I'm not going to leave Rosa," and so when he came back to the States, she pretty much knew it was over.
Yeah.
But when he went back to Hong Kong, and which was unexpected after he came home, when they sent him back, it was unexpected, but for them, that was going to be like their last fling. So they kind of knew that. or she knew that?
I knew it was a matter of time. That when I went back to Hong Kong and we spent that time, I knew it was just a matter of time before she would find out, because there was just no way. Something was going to happen, and the truth would be revealed. What help did you know the difference between Rosa concern for your boundaries and control?
Let me read that out loud again.
Yeah.
What helped you
Oh.
know the difference between Rosa's concern for your boundaries and control?
One of the boundaries that she didn't even, it's not even that she had to do it. I knew I couldn't go back home when we came back from Hong Kong. I knew, I didn't even have to ask her. I had to go find a place to stay. And I stayed in a hotel for a week, and then I had to go to my parents' house and confess what I had done, and then ask them to live there. I'm 48 years old, and I'm going back to ask my parents, can I live with you? Really? And we didn't get along. I had a lot of issues with my parents. That's a whole other story. I can spend a couple of days talking to you about that one. How
The
God restored
restoration
that.
of it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That was, God's done some amazing things there.
Alcohol consumption alone with the opposite sex in the workplace. How do you handle this and have your husband realize it's a safety boundary for your marriage and not control? Then not needing to be cool with the guys/Navy, how to address that?
I heard this from Pastor John Maxwell many years ago. I've heard it from Promise Keepers conferences. I've heard it from Pastor Miles. There's no excuse for you to be alone with another woman. Maybe in business, maybe you're, try not to be in a closed room with them, but you should never travel alone with another woman. You should never, especially consume alcohol or drugs or anything else like that, because it impairs your mind, and there's a lot of things that happen because of that. In my opinion, men should never be alone with another woman, ever. And if they do, one time, this was kind of after we had probably about 2 years, where I was at work and it was a customer service woman. She said something happened where we didn't have lunch. She goes, "Why don't we just go up to real quick to El Pollo Loco and pick up something and then come back and we'll eat it here." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, no problem, let's do it." And so we went up there, and I'm like in the car, I'm going, "What am I doing? What am I doing? What if I preach this, and what am I doing?" So as soon as we got back, I almost like ran out of the car and ran to my office to sit down, because I was not going to have lunch with her. But it was like so automatic for me to do that in the past.
And uncomfortable.
And uncomfortable. And I had, I came home, of course, I told her, but it was just like, I was freaking out when I was there. I was like, I felt so uncomfortable, and I haven't done it since. So I used to do a lot of triathlons and I had a lot of female friends, and now, if I'm doing any kind of working out, it's not with females, it's with men, or I'm alone. It does not involve females at all. My opinion would be, this is a boundary you need to set with your husband. Healthy boundaries with people of the opposite sex, with friends, even my buddies. I had to put healthy boundaries around. I didn't go out drinking with him anymore. We didn't go hanging out. We definitely didn't go to Hooters anymore, any of that. It's just, I didn't have to do a lot of explaining. I just said, I'm not going. I'm not going to be, because we used to hang out and go. We didn't do a lot of bad things, but, we'd go out and we'd talk, how guys talk. And co-workers, whether they were men or female, family, kids, parents, I had to put healthy boundaries around all those while I worked on this and then this. And I didn't worry about my son. My relationship with my son was put on hold, with family members, parents, and everybody else. So you need to put up healthy boundaries and priorities.
Okay. What have you found to be the biggest hindrance to men's healing? When a man's living in constant guilt, when is it okay for the woman to be able to share her feelings without feeling responsibility for his feelings? Does FMO teach on natural consequences? For example, I think it says partners? Or
Let me take the first part of that first.
okay.
So it's about the hindrance that for men healing pride. Pride is the number one hindrance. It's like, and then fear of consequences. You know, when they go through this process, there's so much guilt and shame, and it's just a cycle. They feel guilty after they either act out or they're, you know, with the other woman, they feel guilty. Then they go through the shame process, and I'm never going to do it, I'm never going to do it again, and it just goes continuous like this. And they have so much self-anger, and they take it out on the ones they love the most. And so this, you know, it's pride. It's not seeking professional help. Why do I? You heard on there. I would come home and I would burst out on my family, and I'm like, I didn't know why I was doing it. I had no idea while I was doing it. And I got some help for that through life skills on my anger. Not realizing they have a deeper wound, or recognizing it and getting help, professional help. What's it? Oh, about sharing your feelings. You should never feel guilty about sharing your feelings. That's his issue. But they're not always going to want to hear or care about your feelings. I'm sorry. That's because of what they're going through. We're very narcissistic, and I didn't learn that word until I started reading the Pure Desire. We're very narcissistic. It's about us, my feelings. And a lot of times when they see their wife crying, they don't know how to deal with it. They just don't know how to deal with it. When they saw their mommy crying because their daddy did something wrong to them, well, as a little kid, what do? All you're going to do is hold her. Well, they're angry at you, or they're angry at themselves, and they don't know how to deal with it. They're based. Sometimes in the life skills they talk, I think it's Arrested Development, they're back at that age. They're back at being 5 and 6 years old. When they're seeing their mommy cry, they're seeing you cry. They don't know how to deal with it. A lot of men don't.
There's another part to the question. Should men limit social media? For single women, are there telltale signs of a man who is a sexual addict?
So for the social media, if it affects your marriage and your relationships, yes, absolutely. We have a Facebook account. I have probably 300 people that want to be our friends, and it's not that I don't want to be their friends. It's just I'm just not gonna. We don't really use it.
We only set it up because of ministry.
Ministry need.
But because when this all happened, we totally got rid of Facebook. But then people were telling us, oh, do this on ministry or on Facebook for the ministry, or look this up. And so it's like, oh man, do we have to get it? You know, so we got it to look up other stuff for ministry. But yeah, we don't use it.
But if it's affecting your marriage, I mean, so many times we'll listen to people and they'll say, well, she put that on there, and well, he put that on there, and I'm going to put that on there. And it's just like, well, then get rid of it. Really? Is it really? And I know some people are addicted to it. And, you know, it's like, oh, I'm going to go to the toilet now, and I'm going to go, you know, cut my toenails. It's like, really? Do you really need to know that? And I'm being a little facetious, but you know what I mean. Everybody's putting their detailed life on there. You don't need that. And some people use it very effectively to communicate with their family. Newborn baby, everybody wants to see it. But it also can be very damaging. If he's angry, don't ask him. Wait till you guys are having a nice dinner and you're talking and say, I need to share something with you. And kind of keep it short, you know, and then say, I'm going to go get some help because I'm having a difficult time dealing with this, and I'm going to take care of myself. If you want to be part of this, then please come, but I need to work on it with a therapist, with professional help, because you should avoid not talking about it because he doesn't want to listen to you.
Right.
That's just an excuse. You guys are going to use every excuse they can. Well, you know, that guy Tony has too much gray hair. What does he want about me? Right? They're going to come up. He's short. His ears stick out. He's just not going to work. They're going to come up with excuses, right? And you say, well, maybe that group wasn't the right group. Maybe you should go to another church, or maybe there's other resources. And you know, one of the things, because I've had women say, well, I went to Rosa's group one time and it didn't work. I go, did your wife call her? Did they talk about it? Because sometimes it just could be a misconception or a miscommunication or whatever. So if he wants to talk to me, I'll meet with him. Absolutely. Am I gonna, but I'm gonna be very straightforward with them. Some of you women have heard me talk to your husbands, and I'm not gonna beat around the bush. That can be somebody else, but that's not me. One of the things that both of you might try to do is, what will I'm just running through a scenario. What will help me through this process if you and I communicate more about what's going on with you, and you can share a little and open up to me. What are you going through? You don't need to tell me all the details, but let's have better communication. Let's not just talk about the sin. Let's talk about what I'm going through. What are you going through? How can we do this together? And maybe come from a different perspective on doing that. From my perspective, I'll tell this to every man. I will never be able to tell her to get over it. I'll never tell her that. I'll never be able to say, you know what, it's been 15 years, you need to let that go. For me, I'll never be able to do that. The other thing is, when I would see her get these triggers, one time early on we were having dinner and she just got up and started washing dishes, and I knew something was wrong. I don't know what I was, but I just went up to her and I just put my hand on her. I said, let's pray, or just it's going to be okay. And then in church, she would come into church, and every time Miles would say something about pornography or an affair like that, I just go, oh man. And not in a negative, but it's just like, I put my, she usually sits on this side, right? She usually sits on this side. Now I'm going to get myself in trouble. It's the wrong area to be doing that in. Okay. No. So I would just put my arm around her, and I would just, there's I've heard just recently is somebody that had somebody pass, and people don't know what to say, and they said the most effective thing is weep with me when I weep, and so it's not words spoken, it's just being there, holding her, and just reassuring her that you love her. So from a man's perspective, that's sometimes the only thing we should do. We should keep our mouth shut. Because if we try to explain things, we're really going to mess them up. And when your husband's going through a difficult time, I love it when she just comes up and just does this for no reason. And just holds me. And just, and just give him that moment. Because, we're very machismo. We want to be the man, and to have our wife to come up and just to do that. Just that special little moment. Give a kiss on the cheek or whatever, and just say, I love you. And then just walk away without sounding like a cliche. One of the things that God brought us into this ministry, God took us out of this ministry, and now God's brought us both back into this ministry. And I believe that part of that process is the women are getting healed, going through their process. The men are getting healed, going through their process. But there's nobody to show them how to do marriage together. And I really, we talked about FCO when we first...
For couples only
when we first did this. And I really believe that this tonight is the beginning of that process. And to being able to go over there and have these ladies come over there with the FMO. And then, it's even more of like maybe a Saturday 2-hour where we're up here talking with husbands and wives and being able just to... It's not a counseling session, but it's more like, what does life look like? What does marriage look like after this process? And for us to be able to share our stories and share resources and being able to give people hope of what it's like. And I get phone calls and things from ladies and some of you in here, and they ask me, how could she ever forgive you? And why do you do this? And I told her specifically, I go, because so I can be talking to you right now to help you through this process. And it was difficult. It's difficult when I sit across from another woman, with my wife there, of course, and they show me their pain. I can see the pain in their eyes, and because of what God's done to me, I was never compassionate. I was not sensitive to other people's feelings, but He's changed that.
Amen. That's why I want to add to your husband, if he's going to therapy and doing these things, that's great. That's good. Maybe he's not there yet. That's, be patient with him, and keep encouraging them to go to the groups and whatever it is that he's doing. Sorry men, but it sometimes takes men a little bit longer to get there, to understand what we're going through. I
think our expectations sometimes are really up high. And you know, sometimes the little baby steps that they do take, you need to recognize and let them know, you know, that you see that they are trying to do what they need to do. So, but I think with women, we get impatient and we want to see big steps take place, and that doesn't happen. It's in God's timing, and that's where we just have to sit back and trust and believe that God is working.
One of the things that is really difficult is to not put expectations on your spouse. When you're going through this process, I would highly recommend that you pray about taking those expectations off of your husband and work on your relationship with God.
Yes.
That is where, because they will disappoint you. They will disappoint, because, let me put it this way, not to discourage you, but it took 16 plus.
Took a long time.
It took about 25 years before Rosa got the man that she wanted. Okay? And she says that, not me. She'll stand up and tell men that. I pray it doesn't take you guys that long, okay? But that's why we're here. That's why this ministry is at the Rock. That's why I believe. I would be running, and I would be just crying and saying, God, why did Rosa have to go through this? Why did she have to see this pain? And he just said, get up, because I got work to do. I'll show you why. And this, it's unfortunate that she had to go through that pain. It's unfortunate that I put her through that. It's unfortunate for my family to go through that. But God's got a purpose for it.
Amen.
And so each one of you, at some point, will give your testimony. Whether it's to a group of people, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's a girlfriend or a daughter, a mother, a sister, you're going to be able to go through and help that person through this process. Now that doesn't, right now you're like, no, I got to worry about myself right now. Totally understand that. Do that before you go start helping other people, because you're not really helping yourself. And a lot of women are codependent, and they're fixers. They want to help everybody else. Right now it's about you. It's okay to be narcissistic right now. It's okay to work on this. It's okay to be in groups. It's okay to get your own therapy when your husband's not. It's okay.
I mean, and Tony didn't used to be the person that had was emotional or had a soft heart or anything. That wasn't Tony years ago. So through this process, he's been changing.
Amen.
And so it's possible. It's very possible for these men that were not like that to go through that change.
The biggest one of the biggest things that you can do for your husband is for you to become a strong, godly woman. And he's sitting there watching the games, and you're taking the kids, and you're going to church, and you guys are having a great time. You come home laughing, and he's still sitting on the couch miserable. And he's like, what eventually what'll happen is he'll say, I want some of that. I want to be happy. And so you can't force him to change. You can't tell him if he better change. What you can do is set up those boundaries and set up the consequences. And if he doesn't maintain those, then it's like, you know what, you need to move out for a couple of months or whatever the case may be. And a lot of guys that's what it takes a wake-up call like that to make them change. I'm not telling you to go do that tonight. Okay? But if you do it right, and by the way the book tells you to do that, these people have been doing this for a long time. And you do it with love.
Lots of prayer.
And prayer and compassion. And the Holy Spirit will lead you. Don't go by your emotions. Go by
Like
what...
a psychopath.
You know what though? But you know what? Sometimes these healthy boundaries, you've heard, not in this testimony, but the other one. If Rosa would have brought me back into the house, I would have never changed. I was a great manipulator, a great liar, a great deceiver. I was fantastic at it. I'm sorry, I was. I'm thinking about running for politics now. No.
Presidente.
But you're right. But you know what? We're great. And you know what's really sick? When I was going through this, when I was living in Hong Kong, they didn't invite me certain places because they said, "Oh, Tony, you're a good guy. You don't do the kind of things that we do." And that was like, yeah, I am.
The truth.
And one time I was talking to a guy on the phone. it was amazing how he went, oh yeah, I'm doing all this terrible stuff. By the time I ended the phone call with him, he goes, yeah, I'm not all that bad. I'm like, going, what? Are you serious? You know, he right on the phone he did that, and I'm going, wow, you need to get some serious help, because he you know, he's doing this, that, and the other, but he's a man of integrity, and a lot of us carry that with us. We're men of integrity when it comes to our jobs, maybe in ministry. But you want to know a true man? Ask his wife. That's an ouch. Sometimes.
There was another part of this question in this card. It said, for a single woman, can you define what a man is?
Well, I want to go back to the other part.
Did we answer that?
For a
last
single
one?
woman, like a tall
Oh, yeah.
signs. So how do you know if a single woman, if a man's an addict? I've only watched this show once. What's it called? Brittany or Whitney?
Whitney.
Whitney. Have you guys ever seen that comedy? She's a comedian. I only
think
seen
it's
it one
been- I
time.
think it's been canceled, but it was
It's probably
like
been
from a
canceled.
few years ago.
So what she did is she had a boyfriend, and she went to his apartment, and she was going to find out what kind of guy he was. And he goes, do you want me to stay here? She goes, no, you can go. Do you want the passwords to my computer? She goes, no, I know how to figure that out. And what she was doing is she was going to his apartment when he wasn't there to find out his little secrets. And so I'm not telling you to do that.
I mean, that was
Not-
one way for
that-
her
that-
to find out the kind of guy that she would.
But that's the one way of finding it out, right? What does he have in his drawers, and what are the sites that he's looking at? But if you're single, you need to be asking those questions. Do you look at porn? Are you addicted to porn? If you're a Christian woman and you're having sex with them, stop having sex with them, and then ask him what is he doing in place of that? Watching porn. If he's addicted, he'll be watching porn and acting out. There's other things. Is how is he when he's angry? How does he show his emotions? How does he deal with his finance and all that stuff? You know, there's things that they don't allow me to teach or to coach the premarital couples. They don't allow me to do that. Because they wouldn't end up getting married. Anyways.
Is that it for that question?
And then the other one is, for single women, can you define what a man is? A godly man is a man that's in the Word, that surrounds himself by other godly men, that doesn't indulge in behavior that is not biblical. Somebody that's honest, and when you ask him a question, he doesn't become defensive, and he's very open and transparent. And if he doesn't share his struggles with you, then you're going to find out what they are later. You will.
Okay, next question. This one's a bit long, so I'll take it in sections.
Okay.
My husband really seems to be living in that 20% of the 80-20 rule. I know he still lusts and fantasizes and seems to downplay that because at least he's not doing all the other stuff he did, which was everything. What was this? Oh, he was a full-blown sex addict. Not sure what that word is. Oh, for our entire relationship and all of our marriage. We are a year and a half into our recovery, and he is dedicated to his recovery, but he still gets defensive, still gets annoyed and impatient with me, still lashes out in anger. I feel like I still have to stuff my own emotions, pain, anger, hurt, complete and utter lack of trust, and due to all his deceit and manipulation, because he's not stable enough yet to handle how hurt I really am because of what he did. Yes, we were both broken before we met, but when will he truly be able to hear, receive, feel my pain?
Hold on a second. So I want to go back to the first part of that, about what he feels that because he's not having an affair, he's just looking at porn, that it's okay. What does it say in Matthew 5:27? You have heard it said that you shall not commit adultery, but I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. You know, and You know what? I was the kind. You've heard a lot of guys say, "Well, I'm window shopping, or I'm not touching. Whatever cliche they want to use. It's all a lie, because even though he's not physically having an affair with those women, but he's looking at all this stuff. And let me tell you, when you're intimate time, what do you think he's thinking about?
That skinny one.
That what he's looking at lustfully, And even though he's not having a physical affair with her, he's all those things, all those images are still in his brain. And that's why they say this takes a 3 to 5 year process. You need to kind of remove those things, just like a computer, delete. They're still back there in the memory. You can still pull them up. But as you go through this process, it becomes less and less and less. It takes time for that to happen. So if he's telling you that, that's just a lie. He's not ready. Unfortunately, if he's telling you that, then he's not really committed to what we're teaching him and what God's word says. Because all he's doing is deflecting. That's all he's doing is deflecting it. If he's got this anger things, stuffing, the anger and stuff that I had was caused by my own insecurities. I didn't know how to deal with things, with emotions, and a lot of that anger was out of guilt. And by reading this, he may feel extremely guilty about what he's doing. He just doesn't know how to deal with it. Life Skills is a program that I did 14 years ago. And a lot of guys in FMO and a lot of guys here at the Rock are going to that Life Skills.
And women.
And women. Yeah. You can do it together. Mm-hmm. And that program changed my life. And it does what it says, Life Skills. How do you deal with life? How do you deal with anger? How do you deal with disappointment? How do you deal with your feelings? And so what happened when Rosa and I were actually separated and then going through our divorce, I was going through this Life Skills, and I would call her up, because we would study something, and I would just call her up, and even though we were living at home, I just call her to find out if she's doing okay, because it reminded me of something I did to her that hurt her, and I was learning on how to deal with it. The other part of that was I got to dump a lot on her, and what I mean by that, I was finally able to say, in a good way, when you did this is how it affected me. And when you did this is the way I felt. And when you said this is what happened with me. So I was able to express a lot more. And she was a very good sport about it. She just listened. She didn't get defensive. She didn't say, well, you're wrong. And there's times where just recently.
Those Life Skills are still working. It really did make them a much better communicator, because there was very little communication before, especially with him telling me how he felt or what hurt him, and now he has no problem telling me.
This happened the other day.
Yeah, just Sunday, was it?
Yeah, well, you were there Saturday. Yeah,
yes,
Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday. Yeah, and he tells me on the way home.
Very calmly.
He told me, you said something today that hurt my feelings. And I'm thinking, really? I said something. I had no clue, no idea. But he went on to explain to me, what had happened and that I hurt his feelings or something. And so I was like, wow, I'm sorry, I had no idea. And so I apologized to him, and we tried to move on, but
I kept quiet.
Yeah,
I kept blowing.
He did, because it doesn't happen too often when it's.
Don't tell him that. But one of the things I want to show you guys here is, even though we went through a very painful process, and we learned a lot of things through that, we can joke about it now, because that's the kind of relationship that we have. And one of the things that we talked about a lot of. We got a couple more there. We talked about a lot of things that were depressing, disappointing, but we want to leave, and we want you guys to understand there is so much hope out there.
Yes.
And don't let the lies of Satan or the lies of society tell you, if my husband ever cheated on me, he'd be out the door. How many times do we hear that? Mm-hmm. How many times do we hear about divorces in Hollywood and all that other stuff? You know what? That's them. It doesn't have to be you.
Okay, so another question. What can we expect from the addict on the 3 to 5 year time frame?
A godly man, a loving, kind, compassionate spiritual leader, best friend. Is that it? How do we get there? It's a process. But that's what you can get. That when you are both working together in this healing process, that's what you can get out of this. And the best part of that is best friends. You know, we weren't best friends before, but now we are. She's a priority. Besides this, she's my next priority. Not my buddies, not whatever, not ministry, not other family. She's my priority. Above my son, above my parents, above everything. And so the 3 to 5 year process is going through a healing process. And for me, a lot of this was forgiving other people that had hurt me, and that I didn't go to them and said, you know, you did that to me, but I forgive you. No, I went to them and I said, you know, I had a lot of bitterness towards you. I talked really bad about you. I didn't treat you very well. Will you forgive me? That's the way I did it. And once I did that, the weight that I was carrying was gone. And I had to do this multiple times. Family members, people at work, people here at the church, and I had to go to ask them for forgiveness because of the bitterness I had.
Okay. So another one. When a new man joins FMO, do they get put into a group with the same men every week for accountability? Do they start at the beginning of the book?
They're put into a group, and usually what happens, they're put into the newest group. So wherever they might be in pillar 1 or pillar 2, that's what they'll be put into. We don't always have the fortune. We're not fortunate enough to always go back to the beginning of the book. They'll get into a new group and they'll stay with that group through the duration that they're with FMO. So that does create accountability.
How do you know your husband is a sex addict or just had affairs because he wasn't getting his sexual needs met in the marriage?
First part of that is there's tests to take on Pure Desire and also some of the books, websites, there's tests to take. But him not getting enough sex is no reason, no excuse ever that he has to go somewhere else for to be pleasured. That is, I'm sorry, that's a lie that he'll tell you, and unfortunately, someone will believe that. That is not true. If he, living a biblical marriage, he will not seek sex outside of the marriage. So that's not true.
How can I best support my husband in this process?
Love him, encourage him, be positive, and most importantly, for you to get the help that you need. That's, I think, the most important thing is for you to get the help that you need. And, you can make suggestions. Rosa would try to tell me to go to these marriage counseling, go to this seminar or whatever else. And you know what? When we were going through our divorce and I saw how strong she was becoming, I was like, wow, she doesn't need me. And that really hurt. And when we were going through this process together, it helped me to see that she was getting the help that she needed. So this way, not to sound narcissistic, but I could work on myself and not have to worry about what's happening with her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using that word a lot.
How do you know if when your husband has fully disclosed his betrayal?
I don't think you'll ever know. But to get full disclosure, it a lot of times it'll take professional help. There's a process that you need to go through. For me, what Rosa found out about in Hong Kong was about the affair. There was other things that she did not know about. And every time I would drive from my parents' house to my work, which is about 30 miles, God was just saying, you need to tell her this, and I'm like, no, I don't. She knows enough. She already knows the main part of that. She doesn't need to know any of these other things. And man, it just kept going on and on and on. And so what I started doing, I started writing down everything that I had done. And then females that from work, because when we were I was in several different countries at the time, continents, and they would send other people from work, and these women were just my friend. There was nothing ever going on. But I told her, I said, you know, I had dinner with this woman here, and because we had group dinners. But what I didn't want to happen was I didn't want us to go to the Christmas party, and one of those women say, "Hey, Tony, that was a great time when we were in Germany. We went to dinner. Remember that?" And she would be like, "What?"
Yeah,
Right?
you
So
did.
what I did is I disclosed everything that I could remember, and I want to emphasize that I could remember, because sometimes you go through a disclosure, and in the process, you might find something that says, "What's this?" And he's like, "Oh man, I forgot about it." There's a good chance he did. There's a good chance that he didn't. But that's, you know, it's like we do forget, or it wasn't on the top 20 things that we did. It might have been something that we didn't think was important. But when you find out about it, it's very important. So there's both of those, right? There's going to be both of those. So full disclosure, in my opinion, should be done with professional help when possible, and God will work. Pray that God will work on him to disclose everything. Because if you're going, well, what else is there? What else is there? What else is there? What about this? It's just going to cause more friction between the two of you. I think each individual woman is going to be different. You know, they're gonna, you know, this is something that, you know, with professional help, and if you don't get professional help, talk to each other about this. Say, we need to go through this disclosure, and this is what I would really like to know, and, you know, this is what I don't want to know, and have that communication with each other. Each case is going to be different on how you deal with it. I know some women, I've heard some women say, "Man, I wish you would have had an affair. It would have been a lot easier than him looking at porn, because he would have been touching something." This is what I, you know. Or another woman saying, "Why didn't you just look at porn all the time instead of going to the other woman? He could have just did that." Or, you know, so each woman is going to be different on how they react to this and what is sensitive to them. And see, that you got two women sitting right next to each other that have totally, so it depends. And what I'm sharing with you guys is, this is personal experience. This is not written in any book. And so whatever is going to help you to go through this process is what's best for you, and the both of you. Because sometimes he may have this guilt that's eating him up inside, and he needs to tell you.
Yeah, that's why I think if you don't want to hear it, that's fine. But I think he still needs to disclose it to another brother or a pastor or somebody else, because you don't want him to have that inside of him
He
too.
will.
Because you want him to be able to release that. And the word tells us too to confess your sins to one another.
Yes.
So
And another thing, sister, I mean, you might right now not want to hear it, but if the Spirit wants you to, He's going to prepare you to a place where you're going to be able to hear it, and where it's not going to affect you, where you're going to heal from it and not feel like, you know, like you're saying right now, you don't want to hear it, you don't want to get those images. The Spirit of God is powerful. I mean, He can prepare you for Him to disclose. And that's where I really truly say that the man, you have to pray before that disclosure, because you both need to be prepared to hear what the other person is saying and receive it with love, with compassion, with those things. Because in the flesh, we're going to react. We're not going to want to, you know. But with the Spirit, you're going to be able to.
And you know, and that's a very good point, because the therapist will tell you you don't want to disclose what she was wearing in detail. You don't want to disclose what perfume she was wearing. You don't want to disclose any of those details.
Right.
It wants to be very general.
next question. When did you know you needed to fully disclose to your family? Was it something delayed? What was the time lapse? Trying to figure out why it is so hard for my husband to disclose. My family knows everything and his family knows so little, and since they have made comments, I feel they should know.
So, at the very early in the process, a friend of mine called, and Rosa just told him everything. I mean, do you know what your friend did and all that other stuff? And I got upset. Hey, with a little attitude going on, okay? Let me tell you. And I'm like, really? And she even did that. She goes, I told him. So, but what I asked her is and I did this not in, I don't think it was angry, but I was like, you know what? Let me tell people.
He wasn't happy, but he wasn't.
I wasn't
he
happy
yelling at me.
because she gave him details. You know, it's like let me be the one to tell them. But by saying that, I had to follow up.
Yeah.
And so it started with my parents when I went and I confessed to them. It started with we went to Arizona, and my family, the Mexican side of my family, were very close. And I pulled them all, a couple of my tias together, and I confessed to them what I had done.
And what was that time from the time of the?
It was
minus
when you forgave me. So it would have been from July, 4 months. It was about 4 months, and so we went to Arizona, and I sat down with them and I told them, I said, this is what I did, and not a lot of detail, but you know, and they said, because I come from a history of infidelity, my grandfather, my dad, and a lot of my relatives, and they said, you're the first man that confessed what he has done in our family. You're the first one, because they all knew it, but none of them ever confessed it.
A way to break the chains.
You know,
Yes, amen.
and so and that's exactly right. And so we, you know, it was just like they didn't look down on me or anything. They were actually happy that I confessed it instead of it just being a rumor within the family. And but also what it did is it showed them that we were working on our relationship. I was the one that told all my family, my friends. I waited. I just didn't hang out with them. And at the right time, I told them.
So some of that was like a couple years later.
Yeah.
Or 3 years later.
And now I'm starting to tell more people at work, just, you know, people that God's leading me to tell, and we do our testimony so everybody knows now. But
700 Club, so.
I know. but it was me that did that, and she respected that. And for her family, she did it. It was, I didn't go telling her family. Not everybody in her family knows.
Yeah.
To this day.
Yeah, I would rather they not know. I mean, if they find out, they find out. But I would rather they not know because, like my brothers, for instance, or especially my mom. My mom worries about everything. And so she would just, it would stress her to know that, even if it was something from the past, you know, and I don't want her to worry about that. So there's no need for her to know. So my brothers, I didn't want them to kill him, so so I didn't tell them about it. Well, I knew he told them because I was right there with them, but I didn't know he was going to do that. He said he wanted to talk to his family, but I didn't know. I mean, I didn't tell him, well, you have to tell your family. His parents was obvious he was going to need to tell them because he had asked them to move. He had asked to move in with them, so he told them the reason why. But his relatives in Arizona, you know, he just did that on his own.
Because I knew that I just had to do it. But it wasn't. She never pushed me, or never said I needed to do it. I'm gonna tell you a little story. So I come back from Hong Kong, and I go to Skyline Church with my mom, and my sister's there, and I had just come back from Hong Kong, and it just so happened that this guy I had no idea who he was, comes up, and he's going, "Oh, this is the first time I'm at this church," and I'm sitting there, I'm just like in chaos, right? He goes, I go, "Okay, well, come with us, and I'll go into church with you." First time he had ever been at that church, right? So my sister sees me, and she's like looking like, "Where's Rosa?" And I go, "Oh, I want you to meet my friend." So she's thinking, my sister's thinking that this is my friend, and that's why I'm not with my wife. So it was.
When we were first separated.
The first Sunday that we were. So I was like, that was a little awkward, but no, it's not that. But then I had to confess to her, and you know, some of my family was very critical. They were very critical, and how could you do that to Rosa? She's such a sweet person, and all this other stuff. And you're a Christian man, and you did this and did that and the other, and it hurt. It hurt that they treated me that way. But also early in the recovery process, when I started confessing them, I expected my family to be like, "Yes, you're a great guy, man. You're awesome." And you know what they did? They did this, and I got angry. I expected them to be more forgiving and encouraging to me. They said, "No, we've seen this before. We're putting up our guard because we don't know if you're real this time." So it took a long time for them to begin to trust me and understand what I was doing.
Well, they knew how Tony had hurt me before from, from the previous divorce. So.
So that was.
Did you talk to Rose's family? Like, how did you?
She
No, I talked to.
He never came to them
No.
after.
Mm-mm.
Mm.
No, I didn't ask. Like I said, I didn't really want some of my family to know. A couple of my sisters I did tell.
They
And-
talked to me. They got on my case. They made me feel pretty bad. That was okay. I mean, I deserved it. Her girlfriend got on the phone and just ripped me. Just ripped me.
She was the only one that I was confiding in from the beginning of everything that I was doing, or finding out what he had did. So she was really upset, and she knew, she went through my divorce with me, and so she knew all that pain, and so she was really upset with them.
And now?
No, now she's not upset with him. No, because now she's seen the changes that he's made. So she's fine with him now.
Not by my action, not by my words, but by my actions. That's part of the 3 to 5 year process, right? When guys read that or hear about that, it's like, oh my gosh, I got to spend 3 to 5 years in this addiction process. Well, the actual acting out and all the other stuff is a very short. If they do it right, just a very short portion of it. The other is forgiveness, and he has a lot of shame, and his family's maybe keeps him at. I hear a lot of men are kept at a high pedestal, right? And my son can do no wrong, or my brother's the golden child, right? A lot of that. There's a lot of that. And so for them to go, especially if they're held up that high, I wasn't, so I had no problem. I was, so yeah, Tony did it again. But those guys are going to have a difficult time, because they're the ones that are like everybody looked up to. Eventually, what will happen as God starts to work on their heart, as they get closer to God, they're going to start opening up. And it may not be the way that you want him to, sitting down with his mom and his dad talking about. It might be in a group conversation with his cousins. And his cousin's just going to tell him, hey, you know what? My wife, she just threw me out of the house. And then the compassion is going to come onto him. He's going to say, wow, man, let me tell you, I went through that, and I know what you're going through. And let me tell you how God changed me. And so it might be in that kind of a situation. And that still happens to us. Somebody that we haven't seen in a while, we're able to share with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I definitely would not push him about it.
No.
I would maybe bring it up, in my opinion, in a conversation. Hey, babe, so have you thought about telling your family? Do you, have given it any thought? And just leave it at that, and just put that in his mind maybe, and just leave it, and just take it to God, and just ask God to work in him.
When should you ask? When you guys aren't arguing, right? When he's calmed down, and just say, you know what? I just have some questions. Maybe just a very open-ended question. How are you doing? Is it beneficial? Are you seeing the benefit of this? Are you learning some things or something like that? Instead of, are you still looking at porn? Are you still doing that? Does that help? And be more general in your questions. Again, early in the process, they're very sensitive about what they're sharing, and there's a lot of shame and guilt there, and they don't know how to communicate that. As the process goes on, he's going to be able to show. But again, more of his actions than his words are going to show you. Can you see him doing his homework? Can you see him really involved? And when you do see him, give him praise. Say, you know what? You know what Rosa told me one time? She goes, "It's really sexy when I see you in our bed reading the Bible." I'm like, and she's like, and she's told me, and so I have a book right there by the bed. No. But and those types of things, guy, encourage him when you see him doing well, because it's so easy in both men and women. It's so easy to be critical when they're doing wrong. That's the easy part. Mm-hmm. It's really difficult to give them praise when you're going through this process when they're doing good. It's really difficult. We'll do that. We'll do that. One of the things that one of the processes that we're going to be doing is I'm going to be bringing some structure to the FMO ministry. I'm going to be meeting with each group, the leaders, for 30 minutes before each meeting to start develop them as leaders. And part of that is attendance, homework, and calling guys. And guys, you know, if they're not doing that, unfortunately, if they continue not to do that, we're going to ask the guy to come back when he's ready. I need you guys to understand that. We're not kicking them out. They're not ready. So when that, you know, that's going to be a real difficult thing for us to do. It's not something that, we're a church of pervasive hope. But we're also a church that, you know, if a guy's not willing to get help, or if he's just checking this stuff to make you happy, he's in there for the wrong motives. So we will work on this process. It's not that we're going to start kicking everybody else out. Because when I told everybody, they're like, whoa. I said, no. We're going to come up with an agreed upon criteria that we use. If they're missing, you know, like twice a month, and if they're not coming prepared and doing their homework, and this and that, we're going to sit down. I'm going to sit down with them, with the leader. We're going to talk about it. And they say, you know what, for the next 30 days, if you don't stay with this, then I want you to come to me and tell me that you're leaving. I don't want to be the one to tell you that you're not.
You're going to kick yourself out.
You're going to do it. And so, ladies, it's not that we don't love on them, but if they're not there for the right reasons, then they're actually hurting themselves and others. So.
Something that really baffles me is that my husband says he never stopped loving me through all this madness and infidelity. I have a hard time getting that because I think actions speak louder than words. So how does a man think he can carry on in sexual addiction and still say he loves his wife? I know my husband is willing to do whatever it takes to restore our marriage, and there are other men that have chosen not to be restored to their wives. What encouragement can he give to each of us in the dilemma of waiting, watching, and hoping for transformation of our husbands' hearts and minds?
The first part of this is a very difficult question to answer. That if he did this, if he loved me, why did he do this? Why did he hurt me this way? And like Ted Roberts says, it's not about love, it's not about sex, it's about medicating a deeper wound. And there's something that happened to a lot of us, not just men but also women, that caused this addictive behavior, and we're medicating the pain. For me, it was, I never felt unconditional love as a child. It was always performance based. Things were said to me as a child. My self-esteem, I have dyslexia. Kids laughing at you when you're trying to read at 5 years old. People making fun of you, the clothes that you wear. There's a lot of things that happen to women. Unfortunately, a lot of it has to do with self-esteem. Comments that were made about you when you were a child, or something that triggers you. And so for a man, it's either it creates that type of behavior where you go into isolation, you medicate yourself, then you got the guilt and shame. So Ted Roberts does a really good job of explaining that. When you guys got married, for those that are married, there's a reason why you got married. There was love there. He brought some baggage into that marriage, and he's self-medicating it. And the statistic is, when 19% of women receive Christ, when women receive Christ, 19% of the family will follow the woman. When a man receives Christ, 93% of the family will follow him. So where do you think Satan's going to attack? He's going to attack the men. And because we're very sexual, he attacks us in that area. There's in the Bible, in Bible Gateway, I did a search. Sexual sin, there's 7 verses. Adultery, there's 45. Lust, there's 31. A total of 83 times it's talked about in the Bible. And Satan knows our weaknesses. And he said, that's what you're going to get us. We're very visual. We're very visual beings, and he made us. But he created a lie also. That we'll be fulfilled with that lust. And you know what? I don't know a guy that's been fulfilled with that lust. Because either he keeps getting worse, or he gets caught, and then he loses everything. That's not fulfillment. That's a lie. That's destructive.
Was there an exact moment that your heart changed? What did it take for that to happen? Or was it a gradual awakening? And in parentheses, FMO, therapy, prayer, being in the Word, workshops, etc., all help. However, until there's change of heart, clear intention, commitment, etc., it seems that the true personal and relationship healing is impossible. It's just pro forma. Can you speak to that issue?
The heart, I've already talked a little bit about this. The heart issue was when it was disclosed in Hong Kong, and seeing what she went through. But the biggest part of that is when she says it's going to be all right. It's just like, whoa. But it was also a gradual part of that, because even though we were crying in Hong Kong, I was still numb. I was still like, I really couldn't show a lot of emotions. I tried to, but it was because of when you get addicted to this, or when you have this issue, you become numb to emotions. You just don't have them. It's just, unfortunately, it's not about emotions. We're getting satisfied, and then we're moving on. That's the way we think. And so the part of the gradual awakening was also a huge part of that. And through all these, through the FMO therapy, was huge. There was a question that you had read earlier.
I haven't gotten that yet.
Okay. But yeah, it's and you're right. You're absolutely right. A true change of heart won't come unless there's a total commitment and surrender to God.
Mm-hmm.
It just won't happen. Guys come in and they'll tell me, I'm coming in, I got caught, I want to hurry up and get this done with so I can get my wife back. I'm like, don't waste my time. Don't waste my time. I said, you're here for the wrong reasons. Come back when you're ready. When a guy calls me up and he says, I ask him a question, I say, well, he goes, I'm really tired of this, I really want to get help. I said, what's different this time? He goes, I'm tired of living this lie. I just don't want this anymore. I've hurt my wife too much. And I'm just tired. I want to find out what's going on, why. And starts talking like that, that's a guy I can work with. If he's coming in here because he got caught and his wife is threatening to leave him, and he really is like, I want to hurry up and get this over with, that's a common thing. It's like, no, that's not going to work.
What did it take for you to truly understand Rosa's pain, and what the true cost was of the choices that you made?
Watching what she was going through, not just in Hong Kong, but the whole process. We'd be sitting here at church, and I would see her just in tears. We're here in a place of worship, and she just couldn't. She couldn't get into the worship. There was, this, knowing what her triggers were and seeing her going through that process. It was like I had to do everything I could for my relationship with God, but also to help her through this process by my actions.
Aaron Reineke's office.
Oh. So, you go through therapy, and a lot of times you're sitting here and the therapist is there, and you're talking to the therapist, and Aaron Reineke says, she was telling him how difficult this was. And he goes, now turn around and look at her. And now, Rosa, tell him how you feel. That's hard. It's a lot easier when she's looking at him telling him all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But when she looks at you, and you're eye to eye, and she's saying, you really destroyed my self-esteem, you really hurt me, and you can't look away. You're looking at her eye to eye. That was tough. So now I use that. I stole that from Aaron, but don't tell him. When we counsel, when we sit there with couples, we say, because they're going at each other, it's like, face each other. It's a little bit different. It's a lot different. And seeing the pain in her eyes, that really helped motivate me also. If a guy does this right, I believe the addiction, just like a drug or alcohol, isn't that 3 to 5 year process. It's a lot shorter, because he's learning tools on how to battle that process. The porn or going. He's going to learn from the book. He's going to learn from the men. He's going to have accountability. So, my opinion, it should take probably 3 to 4 months before he stops acting out. Multiple times per week. Then it starts to reduce to once a week, and then once a month, and so it's that part of it. That's what I mean about that process if done correctly, should be done, my opinion, in that amount of time. If he's working his issues and he's getting professional help. Is every guy going to be doing it? I've had guys in there for 4 months, for 4 years, that have 2 months without doing it. And we worked personally with him to get him the help that he needed, and now it's different. So one of the things that we're going to try to do more of, is if a guy continues this process, to sit down with him, get him the help that he needs, and if it continues, and Harry Flanagan from Pure Desire says, you might want to ask him to leave, come back when he's ready. That's the reality of it. And unfortunately, they come back in worse condition than they did in the first place. But they're more committed.
I didn't make my husband move out for an extended period of time or withhold intimacy for an extended period. Is that bad?
That's between you and God and him.
One thing that stands out to say is just make sure you're not withholding intimacy as
For the wrong
punishment.
reasons. Yeah, it's not punishments.
You know, don't do it for that reason.
I think each man is probably is individual. Some are if that's what it's going to take that for them to wake up. Others it's not. That's not going to be an issue. This whole about extended period of time, and if you do the work, which I know, particular some women in here have done that. They did their homework. They gave them a specific time, and during that time there's no intimacy. If it's done correctly, it will work. One of the things that I did, and this was by choice, is I prayed about it and I asked Russ about it. I did a 40-day fast from intimacy, and we were still sleeping in the same bed. But I wanted to be able to do it, to be able to tell other men, it's possible. Don't say it's not, because it is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're telling you that it's not, that's the addiction part of them talking about it. But I also want to emphasize that intimacy is extremely important. And one of the things that Rosa and I talk about it with intimacy is eyes are always open and looking at each other, and a dim light is on. And the reason for that is because I want to focus on her. I don't want to close my eyes thinking about something else. And the dim light is to make sure that we're making eye contact. And you can have an incredible intimate time with your husband when you get done with this process. It's a battle because just because of the sin. But if you do this right, you can have some incredible intimate time. And intimate time is good.
Okay. I think this is going to be the last question. I'm in the middle of a rebound. My husband broke a major boundary, and now I must lay down a major consequence. He's away on a ship, so I never know when he will contact me. I said I'd tell him everything the next time he called, but had a massive panic attack when he did. I think I chickened out because it felt like the final battle, end quote. How do I give the consequence in love without feeling like I have to be raging mad to do it?
Do it in writing. Pray about it. Bring it to your FWO leader. Take it to a pastor. And get confirmation of what you're doing is correct. If that's how you have to do it. Doing it on the phone when he's on the ship in the way, it's going to be difficult. Maybe just say not a lot of details, but write it down and let him know what it's going to be. If in some cases, this is what it's going to take for a man to change. In some cases. Okay?
Okay, anything else you wanted to add?
Hope. There's definitely hope in this recovery process, and I know for women, it's hurtful. It's very, it can be very discouraging. But you also know that there's women that have had success, and the ones that I really admire are the women that maybe their marriage didn't make it, but for Elsa to be up here to teach you, to be here with you guys, and what she has gone through, I have a tremendous amount of respect for her. Because she's become a stronger woman through this process.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's able to help women. not every situation is going to end in a marriage restoration and restored. And this is why God's put her here, is because sometimes it's not going to work out that way. But instead of having bitterness and unforgiveness and everything, she's going to teach you what God has planned for you, and having tremendous amount of respect for her and what she does, and to be able to be here to help women that are going through a difficult time. And some of you maybe going through a divorce, and this is a very strong pillar. She's a strong pillar to be able to help you through that.